co-publishing with Jim Lee.
Yes.
So I don't know. Was there? I'm trying hard to think of another co-publishing thing. To me, when I look at what you told me about Dan Didio has a certain set of skills, okay, and Jim Lee has a certain set of skills, and in that Venn diagram, there's not a huge overlap in those skills, right? There's differences. You seem more like a. Well, then again, Jim Lee managed Wildstorm, and so he knew his share of production and production schedule. So you tell me, how did the duties break down? Were they by type of duty, or were they just split everything down the middle? Tell me how co-publishing how it worked.
It's a yin and yang. I mean, honestly, working with Jim was a pleasure. I can't describe it. I mean, he's a person who is so accomplished and so talented, and just his sheer insight into characters and stories and his visualization. It's also, we have different things. I'm much more into the nuts and bolts and getting down and rolling up my sleeves and getting into the trenches, and he has a much more overview and approach to things and seeing things very clearly. And he loved the digital aspect of it, the digital side, because he has always very fascinating about future thinking and future technology and some future thoughts. You know,
Dan, we can tell that.
He'll have a new iPhone before it comes out. That's why I always used to joke.
Yeah, we can tell that Jim Lee seems very interested in digital comics, and we'll talk a little bit about that soon. So let's keep going. Yeah. Tell me though about that. Tell me about that push and pull on digital and print, retailer pushback on the prices of digital. Tell me what was going on inside of DC with all of that. What was the thinking around digital pricing and first to market and all that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, when we launched New 52, since we're now up to New 52, the relaunch of the line was one thing, but the one that got everybody's attention was the day and date digital, and it was the end of the world to a lot of folks. And I think that's what's so important that you got to remember is there's always this visceral first reaction of things, and you just got to take a half step back and not respond, and just give it a chance to think it through and settle to see what we thought. And we gave it a lot of thought, and we did not see anything that was saying that digital day and date was going to negatively impact the structure of how comics work.
I want to take for a second just to define what that meant. Digital day and date, for you playing along at home, means that digital comics came out literally the exact same day as the print comics, and actually maybe a little bit before, because you could get them at midnight or whatever, but same day, same date, just like other industries might drop things. I mean, I don't know. I'm actually not sure how it still works in the video world about physical versus digital dropping. Those things have seemed to have converged quite a bit. So what was the thinking there, and what was the result that came out of it?
Result is, we had a great level of growth naturally from day one. But after the first 2 years, it pretty much plateaued. And I have to say, quite honestly, digital sales plateaued and pretty much maintained consistent over the last 5 years. You got to forgive me, I don't have my charts in front of me anymore. But it was consistent for a number of years. And we even saw some degradation in digital sales, actually.
Can I make a hypothesis why that might be?
Excuse me?
If you don't mind. Can I offer a hypothesis on why that might be?
I think a lot of it had to do with pricing, I think, honestly. I think what we saw is every time you ran a sale, your sales would go up. But that would be one thing. So people were looking for that value for the digital purchase.
So you said the magic word, Dan. It's value, right? It's the digital comics stink. They stink. So you don't own them. You can't sell them. You can't trade them. You can't lend them to your friends. You can't do anything but maybe pinch them and screw them. You get a little bit of value out of it. So for me, there's a price problem there inherent in that. Whereas if the price were much lower, I might be tempted. But then there's all the equations of, well, if I cut the price in half, I got to more than double the sales. So were there experiments in that? Were the sales used to sort of try and find what the price point might be?
Well, yeah. I mean, we always felt there was a price point on it that's in the marketplace, and but we just didn't want to do anything that was going to over damage the physical sales if we thought we were going to go there, and the upside wasn't worth the risk on the other end. The bigger, I think the other thing too that you see some degradation of sales from is these subscription services. You know, this you talked about not owning. This is the deepest understanding of not owning. It's that idea that it's just this sheer volume of product that they need to sell just to keep somebody reinvesting.
In other words, you mean like an all-you-can-eat Netflix type model, right? As opposed to a piecemeal buy the digital copy. Maybe get a subscription. I get to read all my Marvel comics.
Right, and DC offered a subscription service through the DC Universe Online. Marvel had a subscription service, which was their own service. There's a Comixology one. There's a Kindle one. You know what I mean? So there's ones out there that everybody's participating to some level or other. But again, even with all those books, it still feels incomplete. And it's also, where do you focus? Where do you focus the people, and what are you really reading and not? And so there's a question of how successful that is or isn't. But like I said, but then again, if you look on the comic book side, we're doing our darndest just to limit ourselves just down to the hardcore collectors. And every time you see a price increase or a format change or something like that, it narrows the audience down, which I think also is detrimental to comics overall too.
All right. Okay, Dan, I could see you sitting in a meeting talking about that. I see you sitting there and say, how do we get comics out to more people, right? These comic shops, they're limited. There's only so many. They can only grow so much, even if they want to grow. So, man, we better go for the mass market. And if we're going to go for the mass market, Dan Didio, we're going to go for the massest market of them all, and we're going to go for Walmart. So tell me.
Actually, that's not the massest market of them all.
Tell me what is.
Amazon.
Okay. True, but you're selling on Amazon already. Your products are there already.
Not periodicals.
Not well in Comixology they are, right? Which is owned by Amazon. So there's that. Amazon's got their piece of everything, right?
Yeah. But nobody wants to
everybody thinks, by the way, online retailing is this gigantic thing, but brick and mortar retailer still is tremendously larger than online retail in almost every category. There's a misperception of that in the public, I think, but in comics for sure, one outlet, Walmart, is going to could have more volume than the entire direct market, right? I know those conversations came up, Dan. I know you had those conversations. So talk to me about the Walmart conversations and how the 100-page with exclusive content, new stuff by Jim Lee, new characters that were never in the direct market before, debuting in Walmart 100-page giants. Tell me how that all happened.
Oh, were you in that meeting when they were yelling at me about Jenny Hex?
I'm sure I had that. I have Jenny Hex in my notes right here. Who cares about Jenny Hex? But whatever. But so that stuff happened. So wait a minute. So what retailers were saying and will say is, what reason would there be if it's just the Walmart people you're after? Why bother putting this collectible first appearance of anything in there? Because that's clearly a grab for direct market customers who care more about that stuff.
Comment? Yeah, sure. I mean, what was that? I have to be honest, not lie. Is that what was the first line? What was the first thing?
Don't lie.
Don't lie. Okay, here you go. Jenny Hex in the Walmart book. Yeah, we didn't know it was there.
That makes the most sense of any explanation I've ever heard.
And honestly, if somebody came to me and said, Jenny Hex is going to be a character that's going to break out and that all the retailers are going to be upset this year, appear there first, I probably would have laughed pretty hard in my office.
That one always seemed to me like a little bit of a tempest in the teapot, Jenny Hex. But okay, let's put that aside. But let's talk about brand new content written by Brian Michael Bendis. You got Derringer, or I forget his name, Nick Derringer or whatever, doing the artwork on the Batmans. Beautiful looking comics. That was one of the best looking Batman comics I had seen for like a broad audience.
Comics for me, man. He's awesome.
Amazing.
Yeah. You know what? Honestly, how does life work? You want to go out best foot forward. You know what? If you go out with leftover material, bad material, or something else, and you go, well, I can't believe this didn't work. Well, you put no effort into it. So basically I said, if we're going to do it, and we're going to try to carve new territories, we're going to put our best foot forward. So who's our best talent? What can we do? How does this work? And it worked really well for Brian, because Brian at the time when he first joined DC was much more interested in working on Superman and felt that it was too obvious to be working on Batman. But this is a way for us to get a Batman story with Brian Bendis, and a great one at that. So that was what's fun about it. And it existed off to the side, so it allowed him a lot of freedom in the storytelling, because ultimately the last thing you want to do in Walmart is open up with issue 17 of a 47-part crossover and think that it's going to casually pick something up, you know? So
I get that. And your contention, though, is that it wasn't about Brian Michael Bendis being a name that would attract somebody in Walmart. It was more just about Brian writes great comics and
yes,
right,
100% right. That's exactly what it was.
So was there an editorial mission, though, like they were sent on to say write stories for at this? Because it was clear those were written as sort of a, they weren't written at like an animated series level, but they weren't written at the sort of more adult-oriented Batman stuff that we've certainly seen lately at a Black Label or whatever. It seemed like, to be honest, that Batman book, when I read it, when it finally did come out in the direct market for $4.99, I believe, I read it and I said, I wish this is what the regular Batman series was like, just for a mass audience. Like I like Tom King, and I was really into the Tom King, up and down on it, whatever. But I liked it as an adult reader of Batman or whatever. But I felt like if a kid comes off the street and grab Batman, this is what they want. They want something a little more, I don't know. Tell me your thoughts on that, on how we get that tween generation back to comics, because it seems like we've got the young kids again and we've got the older people, but now it's that video game tween generation.
I mean, listen, the Walmart Giants were very specifically created to attract a casual fan. The ideas in the books, each book was built off of something that had some mainstream interest and knowledge that a casual fan might pick up because they seen a movie or a TV show or a video game or something like that. That was the thought behind it. Then the goal was to make a story that was extraordinarily accessible. You didn't need to know the baggage. If I could convince people that the comics don't have baggage and that they should come in and enjoy themselves, then that's the way to work. I mean, one of my first comics that I read when I was really young, it's the 80-page Giants in the 60s. World's Finest with the Superman and Batman stories. None of those stories made any sense, but boy, were they a lot of fun to go through in that. So we're trying to capture some of that energy in a way that we can produce it affordably, but also get something new that's exciting for them.